engine top decks. Flexible jumper lines allow circulation through the injectors and back into the return fuel manifold. Return fuel is directed out of the front of the engine to the cold plates mounted on the ECMs. Internal fuel flow through the injectors will be covered when we look at injector operation. The flow of return fuel through the cold plates stabilizes the temperature of the ECMs to prolong the service life of these components. A 40 psi return fuel check valve is used to maintain system back pressure to ensure proper filling of the injectors. Excess fuel is now routed back to the fuel tank to complete the system. EMDEC monitors fuel pressure and temperature with sensors located in passages off of the secondary filter housing. This information is used for performance calculations. Remember that although the EMDEC fuel supply system is similar to the mechanical system, EMDEC requires a greater quantity of fuel supplied at a higher pressure with finer filtration. Now that our system is supplied with fuel, let's look at the electronic side, building up a typical 16-cylinder system, component by component. Engine speed commands come from the local operation. Injector plates its fuel on all CMs will shut down the engine. The performance based on under ECM parameters are exceeded. The data. Uses a modified crank. Now looked at the sender at the fuel. One we've now 6 DC. This will be considered a valid signal by the ECM, and it will make decisions based on this signal. Should the feedback drop below or rise above the valid signal transducer? Although the operation of this device is different than a thermistor in that it reads pressure, you can see that the feedback to the ECM is quite similar. Changes in air pressure will result in no range. The ECM will consider the signal invalid and log a fault to indicate a problem with the sensor or wiring harness. The fuel temperature sensor is located on the secondary fuel filter. No inputs into your ECM. If the feed heated, inject feedback goes out. Now EMDEC will and protective sensor. Out of range. What or any log a fault happens sensors. Electronic fuel dead center of #1 cylinder. 36 spokes on the timing plates generate signals from TRS, providing accurate crankshaft position information. Base actions is looking for a for oil temperature is monitored by degrees Fahrenheit. Although it's in a different housing, this pressure transducer works similar to the air pressure sensor. It will provide a feedback to the ECM and east from the 0 reference point. Engine speed is calculated by the ECMs simply by looking at the time interval between the sensor pulses. EMDEC will adjust injector timing and duration to compensate for changes in ambient or engine conditions. The performance sensors provide a feedback of the pressure and temperature for the fuel and intake air systems. EMDEC all the inners of crankcase pressure to the receiver east the same from all fueling rate as the hot oil detector or a pump failure. The ECMs will shut the engine. It is corrective at corner of the engine and operate to Woodward governor equipped engines. Should discharge pressure drop due to a lack of coolant, incorrectly. This task is accomplished through the use of the protective sensors. times and electronic filter housing. The minimum of their time will operate down and log a fault. Oil lets an internal circuit sender ECM and forms part of the basic fuel calculation. Before the ECM as the mechanical thermistor located on the front case pressure detector. This device will signal the cylinder housing, while the air temperature sensor is mounted on the left front corner of the airbox. The air pressure sensor, or boost sensor, is another automotive-type device called a capacitive pressure calculator. Its 9 through 6 uses the same diaphragm at rates injection of the engine in the same location and switch. Above 255 degrees. This sensor mounted on the secondary fuel filter housing. All the data from the performance sensors is interpreted by the system if the engine CM match operating parameter controlling the should oil temperature rise and record the fault. Fueling CMs can operate the injectors, however. They have to be sure that all of the diesel engine support systems are operating the EUI engine or on the top of the turbo lube. Shutdown timings are identical, and however, there is now again, remember oil pressure requirements and that the ECM detector between 0.5 volts DC and 4.5 volts DC, depending on the pressure it's exposed to. You will find pressure is measured by another pressure transducer identical to the fuel pressure sensor, located either on the front right corner of the engine. The temperature sensors used are called thermistors. They are a standard automotive-style device. The sender ECM sends out 5 volts DC to the sensors, and depending on the temperature the device is exposed to, will get a feedback of between approximately 0.5 volts DC and 4.5 volts.